We'll get going on our last session in about 2 minutes, but just want to thank everyone. This has been a really good, engaging day. I appreciate everyone who's been a part of this. Has been a really memorable experience, I think. And one thing I'll mention is that for everyone who is watching, that we will have the recordings of this possibly up tomorrow, for sure by November 1. So I encourage you, if you found this video, these videos meaningful, please share them. Please share them on social media. Please help us get the word out about these trainings. Depending on your state's bar, people may be able to get on-demand credit for watching them. But even if you can't get CLE credit, it's meaningful. We'll have it on YouTube, so anyone can watch it, whether you're needing it for CLE credit or not. And we are hoping to have more videos like these. I'll mention too, we have some of our past CLEs are also available online. You can find those on our website, nlgmltf.org. Also, want to mention we do have a few things coming up with the Guild. Kathy or Jeff, do y'all remember the day and time for our meeting here at the convention? I do not remember off the top of my head. Do either of y'all remember? If not, I'll check the schedule. But that will be for anyone in person, of course, can attend.
So
Jeff.
Our meeting's tomorrow at 4:30 Central.
Okay. Awesome.
In the ballroom.
Okay. So we'll have that, but we'll have it on Zoom too. So if anyone wants to join us, and kind of what we're doing at this meeting is just sharing a little bit about what the MLTF does, opportunities for getting involved. And then after that, on November 11th, Veterans Day, will be our annual members meeting. And so if you have a chance to be involved with that, that'd be great. Also, we'll save that because it is actually time to start our last hour block. So want to thank everyone for joining us. It's been a really, really good experience. Let me pull up one thing real quick. Okay, so for our last session, our speakers are Jeff Lake, myself, Siri, and Shiloh. And let me read you a little bit about each of those people. So y'all already know me, so I won't repeat that. Civilian lawyer, et cetera, et cetera. Jeff Lake, though, is an attorney in private practice in San Jose, California. Jeff has been a member of the NLG since 1985 and a member of the MLTF for almost as long. He is currently chair of the MLTF and editor of its quarterly journal, On Watch. Jeff is also active with the San Jose Peace and Justice Center. We also have Siri. By the way, Siri, I have a dumb question. How do you pronounce your last name? I'm afraid I've been mispronouncing it.
It's Margerin.
Margerin?
Margerin. It's
Margerin. Okay. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Is a respected anti-militarism activist, board member of the National GI Rights Network, Military Law Task Force Steering Committee member, and longtime supporter, ally, collaborator, and former board member of About Face, Veterans Against the War.
Actually, a current board member of About Face.
Excellent. And then also, I think I don't see them on yet, but probably will be on later. Shiloh Emelein joined the Marine Corps in 2005 and quickly deployed to Iraq in 2006, where they were attached to a helicopter support unit and trucking company. They were then sent to Kuwait City in support of the Army quartermasters in the theater mortuary entrance point. These deployments shifted their worldview and internal compass. They are now the co-director of the anti-war post-9/11 veteran organization About Face, Veterans Against the War. So in this session, we are going to be discussing why we do military law. What is it that motivates us and what keeps us going? And I think that's really the most important question, is what keeps us going? How do we stay engaged? And also, along the way, I think it might be helpful to also talk about, what are some of the challenges that we face in this? So who would like to get started? And I'll pull up my notes from earlier from our planning session, but I think we had to discuss the order, but let me pull that up real quick. But again, if one of y'all wants to go ahead and get started, that's fine too. Thought we had
Jeff, I remember you being on first, but
Oh, I remember being on last, but I could go first if people want.
or
Yeah, I don't know if we actually, it looks like in the email we didn't pin that down. So so
All
Jeff, you
right.
want to get started?
Yeah, I can give a pitch here. My name's Jeff Lake. I'm chair of the National Lawyers Guild Military Law Task Force. It's an honor and a privilege to hold that position. I come to this work as an anti-war person. The military in the United States is gigantic. Its budget is almost $1 trillion a year. It's got personnel in bases all over the world, over 700. Um, and so the question is, how do we uh, combat the military and how do we um, work effectively as activists, as law students, as counselors, as lawyers? And so the task force is not really limited to people currently in the military. And its work comprises um, folks before they join the military, while they're in the military, when they're out of the military. Like I said, it's composed of counselors, law students, activists, and lawyers. So it really is a task force. And my pitch today to everyone in the meeting and people watching later is there's all kinds of ways to get involved with the task force and our work. You don't have to be a lawyer, law student. We do have roles for everybody. And why I do the work is to be able to work with all these different constituencies on all these different issues that we face. Um, we Before people join, we have counter recruitment work, trying to convince them not to join. Current issue now is school districts using JROTC as their physical education program and forcing students to do that. And so there's been some pushback around that around the country. And some school districts have changed that policy. Before people join, there's a move now to possibly join people involuntarily, and it's called selective service. And we have that in the United States. And even though registration rates are way down, there are efforts in Congress to expand selective service, to expand it to women. There is a proposal to, quote, automatically register people, which there are a lot of barriers to do that just practically, and it's misguided policies. But those policies are floating around the Congress. So the task force has a subcommittee working on issues on selective service. So if you're interested in that issue, come help out on that. We have an issue of underage people enlisting in the military and then wanting to change their minds. And Matthew Rinaldi, who was on earlier, has been working on that issue. This summer, he had some law students working with him, and he's had some success. And if you look at our recent newsletter called On Watch, there's a little article on that. So if you're interested in that issue, please join us. Once people are in, we've talked a lot during the program today about EO complaints. And the task force has an anti-racism subcommittee, and we work on issues related to racial justice for folks in the military and trying to provide counseling and assistance for folks experiencing oppression in the military on that issue. We haven't talked much today about gender issues. The military faces an onslaught of sexual harassment, sexual assault cases that they don't know what to do with. There's a lot of underreporting, fears of retaliation. So the task force has a gender justice subcommittee working on those issues. And we're preparing a new self-help guide for folks facing those issues. So if you're interested in that work, again, law students can help out. We have one project that needs some work that we can even pay for. So we encourage folks to join us. We've talked a lot today about resistors, representing resistors, and the task force as attorneys working on that provides referrals. And James has talked a lot about it, and we had a whole workshop on representing resistors. And then other folks just want out. They want discharges, medical discharges, hardship discharges. So the task force, again, provides counseling and assistance for those seeking to get discharges to get out. And then we have, if people do get out with bad discharges, we again have counselors and law students and lawyers working with folks who are out to upgrade their discharges. The military has a process for that. So that's another area of work that folks can plug into. Because people in the military are isolated, often on bases or even overseas, we have a lot of written materials on our website, self-help guides and memos. And we have our quarterly newsletter on Watch. So if you're interested in writing, a lot of materials need to be updated. We need fresh content for our newsletter. So if that's your area of strength, writing, come on board. And then finally, there's other issues related to the military that we're trying to work in coalition with. One of the most pressing is the environmental impact, climate change impact that the military has. And we have an article again in our latest issue of On Watch about the environmental impact of the military. And so if you're concerned about that, we'd like to work with you in getting the word out about the military's effect on the environment. So that's why I do this military law work, because there's so many different aspects to it. That's always challenging, always interesting. And again, don't need to be a lawyer. You can be a law student, a counselor, an activist, a legal worker. The task force has work for everybody. So that's my pitch. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. That segues really well, because I thought I would share for a moment on the lawyer side of it. And after that, I thought we would shift gears and for Siri and Shiloh to share about the experience of doing this work as a non-lawyer and some of the dynamics of that. For myself, I think what initially drew me to this work was seeing someone I cared about who was facing a very scary situation in the military. And at the time, this was during when I was in law school. I encouraged my friend, someone I was close to reach out to the GI Rights hotline. At the time, the hotline was going through a time of transition and was not as responsive as they are today. This would not happen today, but at that point, he was not able to reach anyone. Scared me to death. And so I reached out to the hotline, and it turns out they were in this transitional moment. And so I got to attend as a law student their conference where they were really rebooting the hotline after some problems internally. And that was a powerful experience. And not long after that, I got to do a short course in military law that was taught by Luke and Marty Heiken and some others in San Francisco, which got me plugged into the MLTF. And so because of that, thanks to the GI Rights Network and the MLTF, even in law school, I was getting referrals to do more counseling type of work before becoming a lawyer, which meant very quickly after I became a lawyer, I started getting cases. And it was a steep learning curve, but it would not have been possible if it were not for the MLTF. If I didn't have people like the Heikens, if I didn't have Kathy Gilbert, if I didn't have Dan Mayfield, Jeff Lake, so many others I was able to reach out to in the MLTF, and then also in the broader GI Rights Network. There are so many. I can think about the folks at Quaker House. I haven't talked about them enough today, but Quaker House has been a huge part of my work, as far as in a lot of ways, particularly for all of my cases out at what used to be called Fort Bragg, today Fort Liberty. But each of these groups and others, just getting that support early on made it possible. What's kept me going is a few things. One, of course, and I'm glad, Jeff, you mentioned this, military law touches on so many other issues I care deeply about, issues such as reproductive justice, LGBTQ equality, gender dynamics, so many issues, racial bias and discrimination. There's just so many issues that military law touches on. But I think more than anything, it also touches on, frankly, capitalism and the way and empire. These things are all tied up together with the military. And so when we're doing military law, we are reaching out to people who are most affected by some of the most powerful and crushing institutions on earth. The great empires of the world, the capitalist overlords, the big corporations. Ordinary rank and file service members are the ones who pay the highest price. And so being able to help them is a very practical way to resist, to push back against things I don't believe in. But I would also say what keeps me going is the clients themselves. I've in the past have done other areas of law a little bit, but I keep coming back to military law in part because of my clients. When I did civilian criminal defense, I had a few good clients I really got close to, but often it did not happen. The military clients, with very few exceptions, they pull you in. They have compelling, interesting stories. You get to know them, and they're just compelling people. They're good people. Complicated people, yes, but people that you want to get to know. And that's a big part of it. Is that, and also it's being a part of a movement. And this is one thing I actually, when we were talking about this this last session, Kathy Gilbert, who's on here, she had mentioned, I actually want to read something she wrote because I really liked it. She had said, when I asked her, it was like, what should we talk about in this session? And she said, maybe say a little about who's in charge, that we civilians aren't crusaders who come dashing in with their capes to save the day, but rather an important support for a movement that's tremendously important. I think that's really important. And it really kind of actually echoes also what Jonathan said in one or two sessions ago about the danger of celebrity activists. And so in the realm of being a lawyer, it is a definite temptation to center ourselves, to center our views, our words over our clients. And we have to resist that. We have to keep putting our clients in the driver's seat because, one, they're the ones paying the price of how things go. But it's also, to me, really what it gets at the heart of this whole area of work is it's our job as attorneys and others in this role to empower our clients. And that, to me, if the reason the empowerment issue is so big is if you look at in the most recent era, so much of what we've been doing for the last 20 years is really in many ways rooted in previous work that was happening about 50 years ago during the 60s and 70s. And a big part of that was looking at what happened then, and what has been happening more recently has been that through line of solidarity and movement. And so the more that we in these supportive roles play of propping up and supporting and encouraging those who are speaking out, using their voices, and the more we can equip them and empower them to use their voices, the better off we're going to be. So much more I could say, but I'm going to leave it there because I want to give Siri and Shiloh some space. So Siri, do you want to go first?
Yes, and I'm going to be quick about it because I have spoken throughout this day, and I'm going to be saying some of the same things. And I really appreciate what each of you brought to this because those are well-constructed descriptions of why we have to do this work. And also being a civilian, and that's why I think it's great that Shiloh will be following up with their point of view at the tail end of this. And I don't want to take too much time, but I grew up with a military dad, so my life was and all of the issues that we are dealing with today were also contained in that relationship. I mean, it was hard. It's, but that's the thing is you, when you see people, and not my father, he was from a generation that's too far in the past to ever be dreaming about this struggle. I'm sure there were people in his generation who had that struggle, but I didn't see that. But that struggle, the desire to do something that sucks people in, not only to get the money or to have a decent chance at a job in a capitalist country, but this is, so that plus the desire to do something that's greater than yourself, and the sucking up our youth and bringing them into being trained in that in a way that has nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with being able to set aside your humanity and be able to kill when somebody tells you to, and be a tool in the arsenal of this huge military. And whether it's the US military or any other military through history or anywhere, it's always the same story. And somehow it just seems to me like we could try something different if we were ever able to convince people that it's worth it. And that's what I see veterans who have gone to war or who have not gone to war but have been trained in the military and have suffered having their humanity packed away in a little tiny rock somewhere deep inside them, to only to be brought out after years later, is, and see those people saying, wait, this is wrong, we need to change this. And the work that has to be done, the healing, the coping with moral injury, which is something that is so wrapped up in our humanity, right? So it is hard work, it is courageous work, and it is work that holds a seed of possibility for the future. If we can change our minds and transform ourselves like the members of About Face, for example, are trying to do, then there's hope, because the military is not going to, that is, anyway. So those are my reasons. I think it's really important. And I did hear Deborah saying this morning that it was, what was the word she used, that you gain a lot from it. I have learned so much from my experiences over the last 20 years, and I am so grateful for them. And also, I think we're in a fragile time now, and all of us are needed to, find new lawyers who want to come in and take up this work. It's so important. And the rest of us try to figure out how to pass on what we've learned in the most accessible and digestible ways to the folks who are coming after. And with all that rambling, I will pass it to Shiloh.
And before we pass it on to Shiloh, I do want to mention the next code that for those of you who are watching this to get CLE credit, please write down the code M. M is in Mike. That's the first letter. We'll have the other one in just a little bit. So Shiloh, you're up.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for inviting me and having me. I'll introduce myself a bit. My name is Shiloh Emelein. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the Director of Operations for About Face, Veterans Against the War. I've been on staff for almost 4 years now, in different roles. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I was deployed in 2006 and 2007 to both Iraq and Kuwait, and had a real, just a real moment. I was 22 years old, but a real, even at 22 years old, had a crisis of conscience while I was over there, while being deployed and just in the military in general. I want to give a little bit of background about FACE, and then I'll go into why military members dissent and resist, and then why civilian legal support is so important. So about FACE, Veterans Against the War, is an organization of all post 9/11 military members and veterans who organized to end a U.S. foreign policy that's just hell-bent on forever war and violence around the world. And also we organized to end the militarization of our communities through policing, the National Guard, and so on. About Face was formed in 2004 by a handful of disenchanted military members who returned from the invasion of Iraq and had similar to me, like a crisis of conscience from what they enacted in Iraq. So we're initially named Iraq Veterans Against the War, because we followed in the footsteps of the organization Vietnam Veterans Against the War. So we've been around for 20 years. We have over 2,500 members. And that's just steadily the amount of members we have steadily increasing, especially when there's catalyzing events like geopolitical events, such as like when Trump was elected in 2016, our membership increased because veterans are like, oh, maybe I have different points of view here. When the Black Lives Matter protests after the murder of George Floyd, when the protests erupted and the National Guard was called in, again, that was a catalyzing moment for military members and veterans to become politicized and to kind of wake up to their role in the war machine. And then again, after the Palestinian resistance of October 7th, again, we had it's another catalyzing moment where hundreds of military members and veterans called and signed up to be a member of our organization. So like with politically catalyzing events and military events, such like I named, more resistors and more active duty members are kind of wake up and have what I call like a crisis of conscience. And so why do military members dissent and resist? Moments like the Trump election, the genocide in Gaza, it forces military members and veterans to look in the mirror and to confront their own role in violence and harm. And I think especially right now, like it's becoming more and more clear that the U.S. role in violence around the world, and no matter if you're on quote unquote on the front lines or if you're the person sending weapons, that has an impact on your conscience, your morals, and at some point you have to face that. You have to look in the mirror. And so within the military, so I was in the Marine Corps from 2005 to 2012, and at no point in my military career did I know that opting out was an option. I didn't know that you could resist in any way. Like the kind of more or less the culture, the ideas that once you sign your paperwork, you give up your rights. Like that's very much a sentiment within the military, is that you don't have any rights. And yeah, I really believed that. I really thought that, in so many people I know, like I really thought the only two options to get out of orders, orders that went against your moral code, the only two options were to go UA, which is unauthorized absence, or to end your own life, which many Marines that I deployed with did because they didn't want to be deployed again. And in fact, the chain of command actively makes an example of people who do resist, of people who do go UA, of people who try to feign injury to get out of orders, I served under my whole time under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So you had people like outing themselves to get out of orders. Like that was at that time like another way to kind of try to get out of orders. And the reason why the chain of command is so harsh and making an example of people who try to resist orders, and also they don't make you, you're not aware that you have any other options, is because it looks poorly on the chain of command and your superiors if a bunch of people are getting out of orders, are resisting in any way. So there's no incentive within the military to let you know that you can resist. So this is where the civilian legal support like really comes into play and its importance. So it's needed and it's important for all the reasons that I stated above about the chain of command within the military. And yeah, if you're continually forced to do things that go against your moral code by your superiors, that gives you no incentive to actually trust them to help you. And so that's where civilian lawyers and allies play a pivotal role, because they give an unbiased, non-biased information to you. Like there's no incentive for them to keep you there, to keep you in the military. So military members are more likely to trust legal support from civilians because of their deterioration of trust from their chain of command that is repeatedly telling them to do things that go against their moral code. Civilian lawyers and allies only have the military members' best interest at heart, whereas the chain of command has a mission to accomplish, and that's the only thing that they're worried about. And you as the service member are just a cog in that wheel of the mission. And unless you're in the JAG, your superiors, they're not lawyers. They're not versed in military or civilian law. So they're not going to give you credible information anyways. Your chain of command is only versed in scare tactics in ways that that will keep you there. Whereas civilian allies and lawyers are more knowledgeable and have more experience supporting military members. And this is important both legally and emotionally. So you're also not going to get any emotional support from your chain of command. Like at no point in my 7 years in the military did I feel like I could go to anyone of a higher rank to, if I had like some kind of emotional need. That just wasn't on the table. And so, yeah, I think I wasn't at the informationals, the things earlier today, but I know we heard from like Susan Schnall and other resistors. Like resistors, military resistance has always been a part of the military. And it will continue to be part of the military. And so there's an absolute need for civilian allyship and civilian lawyers to support military members. And I could say just in About Face, our organization, like more and more we're taking calls, and we have an encrypted way of emailing that people within the military can email us if they need support. And more, especially after October 7th, like I said, like catalyzing moments like the Black Lives Matter protests, like more and more we get emails and calls like from desperate military members who are desperate to know what their options are, because what they're being asked to do just goes against their moral fibers. So that's all I'll say for now. And the last thing I want to just say is like my like deep heartfelt gratitude for the GI Rights Hotline, the Quaker House, Center for Conscience and War, the Military Law Task Force, and all the ally members, civilian members who show up and know the importance of being there both legally and emotionally for military members and veterans. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Shiloh. And hearing both you and Siri share your experiences as being in these roles of support and advocacy for GIs is really critical. And that actually goes back to one of the other things about why we do this work. For me, a big part of it is actually the chance to partner with non-lawyers. I appreciate lawyers sometimes, but I'll be upfront. In law school, I kept thinking I'm the square peg being driven into a round hole. I don't like it here. And sometimes my feeling in legal context is very similar. There's a different way of doing things. And so I really appreciate the chance to engage with folks from different perspectives. And it's a big, big part of what makes this work so powerful and important. Well, we have about 15 minutes left, and so I wanted to open this up a little bit. We've had some of you have been with us for a session or two. Some of you have been with us all day. But I'd love to hear from some of you as far as why do you do military law, or what has drawn you to this? What interests you in this? We'd love to hear from you, and maybe a good way to close out our time. And part of this, I'll be upfront. Part of the reason we put this topic last was to be an inspiration. It can be hard. We get kicked over and over again by this system, and sometimes it can be very demoralizing. And the people we work with, seeing the shit that they have to go through, it can be a lot. And so our hope is that this session would be one that might give us recharge our batteries a little bit. So feel free, if you have some thoughts, please unmute yourself. We have some space and time for that. And then also, of course, you have questions, we could answer questions as well. But I really would love to hear from some of you about what's drawn you to this work in some way. Bill, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I was thinking about you some when I asked this question because you've been working with conscience objectors for a long, long time. What keeps you going?
Well, I was actually just trying to get on here so I could talk a little. I'll be honest, I'm getting old and I'm getting tired. Okay, so I mean that is, we've been at this a long time. For me, becoming a conscientious objector during the Vietnam War and getting help from people who helped me at that time, and then getting connected with networks that was able to help other folks, and I've often said, once you get it, once you understand what's going down, you can't pretend you don't know. And so that has been what's really kept me going, I think, partly also my religious convictions as a religious Christian pacifist. But I was going to say today was really an inspiration for me. I mean, it's rejuvenating. Like I said, in general, I'm tired, been doing this a long time, heard a lot of stories over the years, and there's a part of me that just wants to enjoy my grandchildren and, and step away from this, but there's a part of me that can't either, So, but I wanted also something that Shiloh said a few minutes ago struck me that I wanted to share. I mean, because I have a recent conscientious, well, he's a current conscientious objector I'm working with, but started working with him a month or two ago. His conscience, crystallized over a year ago, but he didn't do anything. He said, I thought just talking about some of the feelings I'm having could get me thrown in jail in terms of how the military represses, someone's freedom to, to speak and act. And so, and I guess the other thing is just the awesome people I get to know and work with, I mean, I was fortunate to be with Larry in Washington when he was doing his hunger strike. And that was just one of the many awesome people I have, gotten to know over my years of doing this. And so the people I work with inspire me. They're awesome. And yeah, I think that's it, I think. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question if it's welcome.
Yeah.
Just a question for the like civilian allies, and I'll give a little more context first, is that I was recently doing a counter recruitment talking to some high school students with Before Enlisting, which is a counter recruitment group here in the Bay Area. And as the students are so thoughtful, and one of them asked me, do I believe that you have to go through such hardship? I was sharing my story of being in the Marine Corps, and she asked, do I believe you have to go through such hardship to come out on the other side and care so much? And in my heart, I don't think you do. I think it helps. I think it yeah, I think it's a way to like push you to the other side of being soft and being anti-war and anti-militarism. But I'm curious, like, what for people, for civilians who aren't veterans, who haven't been in the military, like, what pushes you to what catalyzed in you to be like, this is a stand that I'm going to take up?
This is Siri. Once, a long, long time ago, I don't know what I was doing, driving around with a couple of IVAW members, and they were having a conversation, and one of them was just like, and honestly, I don't get this War Resisters League. They're they are civilians. They never went to war. How could they resist war if they didn't go? And I was like, wow, just that flip of it, because of course you I mean, I think that experience of seeing injustice, seeing and if and plus so many people who have gone to war have come back with the same wounds that we see over and over again, and they write about it, they paint about it, they make movies about it. And if we listen, if we all you have to do is listen, and the same process that military folks go through is we civilians go through the same thing of just becoming aware of exactly how loaded the dice are, and exactly, all of this stuff. So we have so much in our hearts that's in common. The thing that civilians don't have is we haven't been through that training, which is something that you know I think that is a lot to carry, and that's something that we can only support you and be present to be supported that, because we didn't do it, although by now, you know it's not. Anyway, so I think that the line is really true, and it is a hard line between a civilian and a veteran or a service member. There is a line that except I think people who have suffered in physical war might have crossed that line, but otherwise there is a line. But I think that we have a lot of in common, and looking at the work that has to be done, we have that. We're on the same page.
Siri, I'm glad you mentioned that, particularly the dynamic of some of the tension between non-veteran activists and members of the military we might be working with and veterans. And it's really tricky. The one suggestion I would give on this for non-military activists are that when we enter military spaces, we really are entering a foreign culture. It
Mhm.
has different language, it has different values. And even when we're dealing with anti-war troops, they're still coming at things from a very different place. And so that can be challenging. I think part of what can make it go better is humility. The more we can go into this with a curious spirit, and I try with my clients and in other contexts to be very upfront to say, I'm not in your world. An occasional visitor to your world, and so I will need your help to make sense of this very alien environment. And if we go into it with that spirit, to me at least, it makes it a lot easier. And I know that there's tension here. I know some lawyers and some GI rights counselors, I think there's some fear of, if I tell my clients how ignorant I really am, they won't trust me. I think personally that sometimes, though, it's more of an issue of distrust when you go in bluffing, like you know what you're doing and you really don't. It's better to be honest and say, I don't know the answer to that question, or I don't understand this aspect of military culture. Could you help me to understand it? But coming into that from that place really makes a big difference, I think.
Curiosity and humility.
One other thing I'll mention that we haven't talked about a lot today, but it's come up some in the chat in the last hour or so, is the challenge we face when we have differences of opinions, either with people we work with or with our clients. And I'm curious what strategies you all have in dealing with this issue. I think for me, what I try to do is to look for points of commonality, but also to look for what are the lines I can't cross. And it's tricky. I can think of one example. I had a client, a decade or more ago, and it was just a basic absence case. He was on track for a pretty decent discharge. But along the way, this guy, when he started getting to know me better, started espousing incredibly hateful things about LGBT people, enough that I did not want to work with him anymore. I wanted to fire him as a client. And my therapist, I talked to about this without revealing names or anything like that, just in more of an abstract kind of way. My therapist said, James, I guarantee that every LGBT person this person encounters in the military will be very grateful this person's getting out of the military. So don't sweat it too much. And that stuck with me, that there are people that most of my military clients I love. They are likable people. I enjoy them. I like them. I've had a few I don't like. And sometimes, though, I come back to saying whether I like them or not, they still need help. Whether I like them or not, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. That this person is, it's better for everyone, including them, that they get out. But it can be hard. Where you draw the lines, I still, there are times I struggle with this, but I'm curious for y'all. How do you unpack this? How do you deal with these points of disagreement when they do arise?
Well, with our work on the GI rights hotline, we're we're trying to help people achieve what it is that they want to achieve. And it's not always what we would choose to do. And I think looking at it from that perspective, makes it possible to do this work sometimes when you're dealing with people like that. But there are some which I know what you're talking about, James. Yeah.
I think it does help when we do have a strong sense of mission, that we know that it's more than just one individual case, one individual circumstance, that that helps sometimes, but it's still challenging.
And it's also we're talking about justice. Okay. I mean, even if somebody is a racist bigot, if they're getting screwed over by the military, why not? Why not help them if we can?
Yeah, absolutely. Now I have a client now who is a big fan of a political candidate I don't really care for, and it's been a real challenge. And yet his case deals with justice. He's being mistreated, so I have not fired him, even though we have agreed to limit our political discussions because it upsets him, it upsets me, so we just don't talk politics. We just stay focused on his case, but it can be tricky. So. Well, we are at the end of our official program today. I want to thank everyone so much for being a part of this. We will have the recordings up in the next day or two. Please share these videos. Part of the reason we make these videos is because a lot of this information, we want to get it out there, not just the people sitting in this room or the people who are on this Zoom meeting, but to get it further out there. So I encourage you to help us get the word out. We will be sending out an email as well with some feedback, asking for feedback on this presentation and critique. For lawyers seeking CLE credit, I'll send you some information as well afterwards. And I think that is it. I guess the only thing I'll mention is we do have a few MLTF things coming up. Tomorrow, Jeff, I think you said it was 4:30 is our meeting here at the convention.
Yes.
And then on Friday, we have a resolution. I think it's on Friday at the plenary that we will be advocating for. And then on November 11th will be our annual members meeting. And I guess I'll close with saying if you're not a member of the MLTF yet, anyone can become a member. I'll put information in the chat about this. I'll mention too, some people, because we are part of the National Lawyers Guild, to be a full member, you must also be a member of the National Lawyers Guild, which by the way, does not require you to be a lawyer. Legal workers are admitted as members of the NLG. But there are some other options if you for whatever reason, either can't become a member of the NLG, you can also join as become a friend of the MLTF, and you get access to our journal and whatnot as well. So that's in the chat. Other than that, thank you everyone for so much, and especially thank you to our presenters. You made this a very memorable, as a very good program. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks to everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And may we prevail.
Yes.
Yes.
Hear,
Join
hear.
us, join us in the year ahead.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.